Get rid of your credit card debt, get a lower monthly payment, and skip your next 2 house payments at SaveWithConrad.com. NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket to save thousands with SaveWithConrad.com. Find out how much money you can save right now at SaveWithConrad.com.
Hello, wrestling friends. I'm Matt Koon, which means you're listening to Wrestling Friends with me, Matt Koon, and you, my wrestling friend. You know how it is. I don't know if it was like this for all of y'all, but definitely was like this for me as a kid growing up, where you kind of kept the wrestling thing kind of a secret sometimes, right? Because there was some shame in it for some reason. Now, there should not be any shame in it at all, but there is. And then you meet that one friend who also likes wrestling, and that's your wrestling friend. And then now you get older, it's a little harder to come by. But luckily for me, I've lived an amazing wrestling life where I've gotten to meet some amazing people, gotten to interview people that I would never have thought I'd interview, and got to become friends with not just people you've heard of, but also just all kinds of people, fans just like me and you, around the world of professional wrestling. And that's what this show is. Joining us this week will be Nick Hausman. Nick is a guy who I knew him before because he worked with Bischoff. He had a podcast with Eric Bischoff before Conrad did. And then he was with WrestleZone. And I remember I would send him clips from Why It Ended, the podcast I did with Robbie E. You might know him as Robert Stone in NXT. And I'd send him clips to try to get some publicity, And then we met in Chicago, finally, and we hung out. We had a good time. We met again in Las Vegas, which was a long weekend, the first Double or Nothing weekend. And then we saw each other again in Los Angeles just this past WrestleMania season, and we had a good time again. He's just one of these guys that is exactly what I'm talking about. A friend I know through wrestling, who's a good guy, who is an interesting guy, and he's doing some amazing things. Of course, last week we had Raj Giri, kind of the strangest kind of controversial figure who shouldn't be controversial at all. As I said last week, Raj is just successful, and I definitely want to kind of steer away and pivot away from all the online social media talk last week. I know a lot of the listeners here are just regular old wrestling fans that don't get on social media and don't do all that stuff and just want to hear about wrestling. So we're going to talk about some wrestling today. We're going to talk about Cody Rhodes. And Cody Rhodes, was he intended to win the title? Some people disagree. I'm not sure. I want to talk about Roosh, a wrestler with AEW, and some thoughts I have about him. And I also am going to talk about Collision. Collision was just announced, the main event, CM Punk and FTR against the Bullet Club and Samoa Joe. Of course, that's a big deal for me because Dax is my dude, Cash is my dude, and CM Punk is someone that I'm a fan of. And I also like the Bullet Club, but when you got friends in there, you want to see that. But also, what an amazing main event that is. And then, kind of tagging on some stuff we did with Dax, I do want to talk about some mental health stuff. And I know, mental health stuff can be kind of a downer, and maybe not the greatest podcast drawer. But I don't think I've gotten more heartfelt correspondence from anybody or for any subject as much as I have for the stuff we talked about with mental health, particularly Dax's stuff, my stuff just tagged on. But I do want to kind of relay a situation that happened with me this week a little bit, and just a message to y'all out there. And by the way, if you are struggling with any mental health issues, talk to somebody. One of my issues is that I don't do that. Even on the show, if you listen to Dax and I talk about anxiety on our anxiety episode, I literally say things like, get some help, guys. Talk to people. There's no shame in it. But on the same episode, you can hear me talk about how I'm having panic attacks almost every day. It's the worst it's ever been, and I'm not getting help. I'm powering through. So we're going to talk about that because sometimes you can only power through but so much. But first, some professional wrestling talk. So, y'all see everything going on with WWE right now. We were very AEW heavy last week. In WWE, they have a great bloodline storyline. We've all been watching it. And finally, Jimmy kicks Roman Reigns, sticks up for him. Jay's got to make his choice on Friday. Everything's moving along. On the other hand, Cody, has been working this somewhat strange, I think, angle with Brock Lesnar, but basically just figuring out the best way to stretch out this feud with Brock Lesnar from WrestleMania into SummerSlam, having it finish at SummerSlam. I put out there, and some people disagreed with me, that I do really think, and I want to know what you guys think. Of course, you can at me, at Matt Koon Music. Cody was supposed to win, right? Like, he really was. Like, the whole story of him being out that long, he got hurt for real. But then he comes back and wins the Royal Rumble, right? They talk all about his dad. They talk all about he wants this title. This belt means more to him. Roman kind of insults him a little bit. Like, it's all set up for Cody to win, right? Like, he was supposed to win, and they changed at the last second, right? And the new belt, like, was the new belt supposed to be there? Like, if Cody was supposed to win, they don't need the new belt, right? And maybe they just threw that thing together. Now, some people told me, I think Sam Roberts on the old social media said something to me about, hey, they couldn't have put it together in that short a time. If anybody could, it's the WWE, right? Make a new belt. We've changed our mind. Maybe a week, 2 before WrestleMania. We've changed our mind. We're going with Roman. For whatever reason, we're going with Roman. We're going to keep the plans the way they are, but we're going to go with Roman instead of Cody. So we got to make this new belt. We got to figure out what's going to happen. We're going to put Cody off for a whole year, and everything else is going to be the same. You've got this bloodline angle, and I don't care what anybody says. Honestly, it does not need the belt. The idea that Roman Reigns at this point in time needs a belt to be the head of the table, needs a belt to be the tribal chief, is ridiculous. He doesn't need it. I hate to say it, he's bigger than that. This is about family. This is about intensity. This is about betrayal. This is about trust. I saw a great thread on Twitter about how this is about narcissism and being in a narcissistic relationship. The WWE title has been pushed to the back, which further supports my idea that Cody was supposed to win it. Because who's out there? You got a guy who's the main champion, right? And there's nobody out there talking about winning it from him. There's nobody out there doing a promo talking about, I want that title. They're just holding off for the big J match or the big Jimmy match. But meanwhile, they've decided nobody's out there to challenge him. Seems interesting. Meanwhile, like, Cody has been wrestling, Brock. He gets the roll up in the first match. The second match ends in Cody passing out, which, say Cody had the title, that easily could have been a DQ, right? You could have done it several ways, and you have the big rubber match over at SummerSlam. That certainly makes sense to me. If you have Cody as the champion right now, the bloodline is the same and maybe even better because Roman's really pissed off about something. Like, what's Roman really pissed off about? He'd be really pissed off if he lost that title. He'd be really looking, he wouldn't be so concerned with those tag titles the way he's been. Like, he got really upset at Jay and Jimmy for losing the tag titles. Man, if he didn't have that World Heavyweight Championship, Undisputed Universal Championship, then he'd be really upset. So I believe it's a theory, and it's based on a couple things, but I believe that Cody was supposed to win that match, and that was the booking all the way through Royal Rumble. And then something happened after Royal Rumble, between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. I could very well be wrong here, because this is absolute conjecture, but a couple other things, I don't know, man. I just think that's what happened. I also think it happens to be a mistake. I also think they had a chance to put a rocket to him, and a year from now, will Cody still be where he is? Man, he's making it happen. In WWE history, he wouldn't make it happen, because WWE cools people off, right? They don't know how to keep someone hot for a long time. But Cody just is doing everything in his power to squeeze as much lifeblood out of this year as he can to stay as hot as he can for next year. But my thinking is he was supposed to win. They changed that. You disagree? Let me know. Roosh, man, Roosh is a great wrestler, isn't he? Like, he's big, he's charismatic, he looks real in there, he looks dangerous in there, looks like he really hurt somebody. So, that's because he does, right? So, this is something that, again, a lot of people disagree with me on, but I would encourage you to go back and watch Roosh versus Jungle Boy from Dynamite about 4 weeks ago. They're only singles match, so it's easy to find. Watch that match, and you tell me, Jungle Boy is it's the one right before Double or Nothing, right? Or 2 weeks before Double or Nothing. His last singles match before Double or Nothing to show what he can do. Now, I guess maybe the idea is Roosh is supposed to be a trial by fire, toughen him up, but that's not what happened. Roosh beat the shit out of him. Like, legit. Like, he threw him into the barricades. Like, of course, everyone goes on the barricades, right? But we're talking these running starts, and Jungle Boy had no choice but to go with him. And, Jungle Boy's doing these big moves that Roosh is just standing there and taking. Like a big clothesline that's supposed to be a comeback idea. Nothing. Roosh does these, he grabs his balls for no reason. It was the strangest thing, right? Just grabs his balls, and it really treats him like a little bitch. Like, in the match, the character of Jungle Boy, like a little bitch. Maybe that's supposed to happen. I don't know. Roosh does this move where he gets you in the corner, and he balances on the top, or he grabs the top ropes and starts jumping up and down on the person's chest. Watch the Jon Moxley match. See if he does it to him in the face. He doesn't. He doesn't kick him in the face. Watch him against Claudio. He doesn't kick him in the face. Watch him against Jungle Boy. He is kicking him in the face over and over and over again. Jungle Boy was powerless in this match. Now, I don't believe the match was a shoot, quote unquote, but I do believe that Roosh was doing whatever he wanted, and Jungle Boy was ill-equipped for many reasons to not be able to handle it. Jungle Boy's a professional wrestler. Jack Perry's a professional wrestler. He doesn't, and he shouldn't be expected to shoot fight somebody. He shouldn't be expected, if he gets instructions to go out there and knows what's going to happen. If that doesn't happen, maybe he should have the veteran awareness to turn it around the way a Moxley can, but he doesn't have that. He's young as crap. And he's inexperienced as crap compared to like a Moxley or a Castagnoli or someone who knows how to handle that situation. A lot of people told me online that said, hey, in this situation, you got to know how to handle yourself. If a guy starts to act like that, you turn it around on him. Why should he have to? This is professional wrestling. Now, I get it wouldn't happen to Dax, because Dax will fight you, right? I get it won't happen to Jon Moxley, because Jon Moxley ain't having it. But should you be in that situation? And if someone who is deer in the headlights the way that Jungle Boy was in that match, should the guy just keep beating him up and beating him up and beating him up? Watch the match again, guys. Watch it again. A lot of like Matt Koon is a mark, or Matt doesn't understand lucha talk because of this opinion. But let me tell you about something else. TK O'Ryan. TK O'Ryan was a wrestler in Ring of Honor. Big future. Had a match with Roosh. Had a concussion. Didn't wrestle much for Ring of Honor after that. Did a tour with a couple people and has not wrestled. The reason I bring up TK O'Ryan is because it was brought up to me by a Ring of Honor wrestler who said, yeah, Roosh can be dangerous because my boy TK O'Ryan was never the same after wrestling him. This was told to me. This was told to me by a wrestler who would know. Not something I'm making up. So, should Roosh be in a wrestling ring with other people? No. Because this is old school, right? He gets a chance to be on TV, he's going to show what he can do. But the judgment of what he was doing, Jungle Boy really could have got hurt out there. And when you look at people like Jim Cornette and Dave Meltzer, and usually when I say their names, right, I'm going Jim Cornette or Dave Meltzer, right? But no, they both said that Roosh, quote, went into business by himself, unquote. Brian Alvarez said something went terribly wrong, unquote, and nobody's talking about it. This is something I heard about AEW from someone who would know in AEW that said that people weren't happy with Roosh. I'm telling you what, if you think I'm wrong, ask your favorite wrestling journalists. Ask them to look into it. I'm saying it because I don't even like Jungle Boy, really. Like the comments I heard on the Dak show about him not wanting to work with FTR, the stuff that he said in the ring, you know. I mean, he's a fine wrestler, I guess, a young wrestler, but the stuff he said in the interview when he was in the ring where he said he wouldn't take advice from Billy Gunn or that, and then gave the really long, drawn-out, kind of dramatic, melodramatic answer about Punk. I'm not sitting here as this giant fan of Jack Perry. I'm sitting here as a guy who looks at another guy who's in a situation he's way in over his head on that he shouldn't be in. And when you're a professional wrestler and you're in a situation where your safety is in the hands of somebody else, at least the way I look at it, as someone who's never wrestled before, that's unacceptable to bully and to hurt and to not care about the safety of the person you're in the ring with. It's not cool. And I'm going to die on that hill because a lot of people disagree with me. But hey, look up his matches against TK Ryan. Go ahead and do that. Watch a Jungle Boy match again. And then ask some people. And I'm thinking that, no, I don't want to see him in an AEW ring again or WWE ring again. But people can change. People can get punished and people can have accountability. And no one's irredeemable. But right now, we can't treat him like he's some kind of badass. You can't have Jose the assistant out there going, he's the most dangerous man in all elite wrestling, too dangerous for TV. That's bullshit. He just bullied a kid. I mean, that's unacceptable. So that's something they need to figure it out. And like I said, I'll die on that hill. My God. All right, so we've got Nick Hausman coming up. Nick Hausman, great guy. Lots of cool stuff. A lot of cool little inside nuggets dropped on the interview if you pay attention. But before we do, guys, support the show. Support the show if you can. This show is done a lot better in a lot of ways than I thought it would do after Dax left. And I want to keep it going. And the best way is to support us and support our sponsors. And of course, you know, you got Father's Day is right around the corner. And you haven't gotten your dad anything yet. Don't worry. That's where today's sponsor comes in. Manscaped. Of course. You and I both know that everybody, including him, needs some serious grooming in his life. So grab your dad the Performance Package 4.0, and he'll thank you for helping him tame his beast. It's a win-win situation for both mom and dad. Go to manscaped.com, guys, and use code WF20 for 20% off and free shipping. You know that Manscaped is the only men's brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming. Man, when they first came out, people were like, what is this? And then the next thing I know, everybody's got it. Everybody's getting it. Everybody's loving it. And when you get it, and I did, man, the package it comes in and all the cool little accoutrements that comes with it, whether it be, your ball toner or your ball deodorant or the Weed Whacker 2.0 nose and ear trimmer, and all the little accoutrements. Imagine surprising your dad with like a really well-designed, cool box that says, your balls will thank you on it. It doesn't say it, but it's written on there. If it says it, my God. The Lawnmower 4.0 is the industry standard. It is a revolutionary device that will tame your shit and tame your dad's shit. I know you don't want to think about it, but he needs to, like you know. And he's never buy it for himself because that's not dad, right? Get it for him. It allows you to customize your trim through additional guard lengths with sizes 1 through 4. And of course, don't forget, this isn't a read for the beard hedger, but I love the beard hedger. I finally got rid of the world's worst beard, and I used the beard hedger to do it. Now I got the world's okayest goatee, thanks to Manscaped. Of course, they have a million other products as well, like cologne, crop mop, ball wipes. Who doesn't need those? Crop Reviver, ball toner, and crop preserver ball deodorant. Get your dad a gift they will use. That's 20% off, guys. Manscaped.com with free shipping. using code WF20. Don't forget that you came from your dad's balls. You know, I don't know about that. Like, this is a great product. Not sure about that line, but I'm going to use it anyway because it's written here. Don't forget that you came from your dad's balls. This year, show your original home some love with Manscaped. Yeah, they brought it home. Oh, that was good. Guys, manscaped.com. Code WF20. And now the Collision main event announcement. My goodness. CMFTR, I did not know, who are taking on the Bullet Club Gold along with Samoa Joe. Now, Bullet Club Gold have a chance here to do some cool stuff in AEW these days, right? Like Juice Robinson, credible, entertaining, enjoyable. Jay White, same. Both young, both good, both know what they're doing, both charismatic. Looks like, it's going to be a good feud with FTR, leading to hopefully some tag matches with them. Hopefully we get to see FTR on tag matches on TV at some point. And then you've got CM Punk returning to Chicago. And then Samoa Joe, his old rival. Lots of ways you can go with this, right? I saw today, and I thought it myself, but I'm very, hesitant to say stuff sometimes because people wonder where it comes from. Again, stupidly. But, I saw something. CM Punk could turn on FTR and join the Bullet Club and lead the Bullet Club. Well, goddamn, that sounds great to me. I'm for it. I would love that. Or it turns into a thing that spins off into CM Punk versus Joe for a singles match. Love it. There's no bad ways to go. My gosh, FTR could turn on CM Punk, not join the Bullet Club, because I think they already have a tag team now. I think the Guns are going to join the Bullet Club. And if you look at the Bullet Club, you got Jay White, you got Juice Robinson, you had the Guns, and maybe even, I would suggest Jungle Boy turning heel and joining them. And you've got yourself a hell of a faction. But let's say you don't do the Jungle Boy thing, and you do the CM Punk thing. CM Punk is the leader of the Bullet Club. Oh my goodness. But those guys, those 6 guys, in particular the 3, Punk and FTR, headlining the first Collision is a big deal. It shows a couple things. Number one, it shows the faith that AEW has in them to do this, right? There is an element, I think, of, oh yeah, guys, you show us, you pop this rating. But also, TK's no dummy. He's not going to put him up there if he doesn't think there's a chance that you're going to succeed. Of course they're going to succeed. A number 2 thing is we're kind of seeing the division a little bit, right? Like the brand split a little bit. Is the Bullet Club going to Collision along with Samoa Joe? Is this the first 6 guys of the brand split? Is this what we're going to see? Like 6 badass wrestlers on this side? Maybe more sports entertaining on the other side, Maybe you keep some of the other big names on Wednesdays, but you go with Punk and some of the, real credible, but still decent-sized names like Andrade and Miro over on Saturday. I'm for it. I love it. I think this is going to be a great roster. I don't think, in my opinion, FTR are still getting a fair chance on Dynamite. I know you're going to be like, they got the titles. Okay, yeah. How often do they wrestle? How many tag team matches have they had on Dynamite since they won the title? The answer is 0.0, right? How often are they on? Some backstage segments, in-ring segments. They're the tag team champions. They should be front and center, along with the world champion, along with the other important people. They were the hottest team, the hottest thing in AEW just a few weeks ago. Why aren't they on every week? Well, might just be business as usual. Might just be the same people. I don't know. Maybe just thinking Dynamite is better if they're not on the air. But they'll have Collision, and they can build it over there. CM Punk, FTR, Bullet Club, Miro, Andrade. With that main event, my goodness, build it over there. If they do that, of course the first week's Collision will do better than Dynamite, but if they do that and they make it the cool wrestling show with the wrestlers that are a little more rough and tumble and a little bit more credible and a little bit less sports entertaining and more wrestler, I think they have a good chance for success. So I'm thinking I am for it. All right, guys, joining us this week, this is the exact kind of wrestling friend I wanted to have on here, because through wrestling, we meet these people and, you know, you say, hey, there's that guy or there's that guy. And I saw him again in Los Angeles, and he has started this great new thing called Haus of Wrestling. He's got podcasts, he's got video streaming, he's breaking news, doing all kinds of stuff. You might know him from a million other things you've heard him do over the years, and maybe a couple things that are in wrestling history forever. From Haus of Wrestling, our good friend Nick Hausman.
Oh man, thank you so much for having me, Matt. For all of pro wrestling history, eh?
Dude, do you not think that Brawl Out is going to be in pro wrestling history forever, and your role in it, even against your will entirely, is going to be forgotten?
No, I think you're right. And I think that at some point somebody's going to do a documentary about it, and I'll probably get to be a talking head. I interviewed Evan Husney from Dark Side of the Ring 2 weeks ago, and I asked them if they were going to do an episode, not because I think it's like appropriate for the show, but just because I need a payday and I'd really like to talk into a camera. So, yeah, you're right. At some point somebody will do it.
Yeah, and it is a weird thing. It's not really why I had you on, but it is something that you're known for now a lot, is that, you know, Punk just looking at you and just setting him off, and that was it, you know. Everything that he was angry about kind of came to surface at that moment. But it was, you know, because you have a history in Chicago, you have a history in wrestling, you have a history with apparently Colt Cabana and some other stuff, but really you have a history doing tons of things in wrestling, and now with Haus of Wrestling, you got your own thing that is off to a huge start, one of the hottest things in wrestling media these days. Talk about Haus of Wrestling and how it got started.
I parted ways with Wrestling Inc. After, what was it, 5 years, I think, with them, 5 or 6 years with Wrestling Inc. Back in February, I took about 6 weeks off to clear my head, and was asking people, you know, what they thought I should do for my next step. I had a lot of people tell me to launch my own brand. They're like, man, people know who you are. So hustled very quickly, have some wonderful friends that are in the web design space, got a beautiful website put together, got a business plan put together, and then a couple days before WrestleMania 39, we went live. I took off for Los Angeles, and the first big stories the site broke were comments I got from wrestlers there, and of course the infamous Paul Heyman claiming that I'm causing problems or something all the time. Was a very big moment within the first 96 hours of the site or brand ever existing. So what a whirlwind that was.
And that's kind of the genesis of this Wrestling Friends thing, in that I saw you in Los Angeles. You're like, hey, Matt. And I'm like, oh, that's that Nick guy, Nick Hausman. I like Nick a lot. We always get together. We've had drinks in Las Vegas. We've talked in Chicago. We met in Chicago. And now here we are in LA. It's not like, you know, we only know each other through wrestling, but we're always glad to see each other. What's it like having this kind of cool network of wrestling friends around the country that you only see at these events, but you never know when you'll see them?
Man, it is. It's really positive. I've been talking more openly these days about my mental health. Big advocate for therapy. Without getting into too many details, I thought I dealt with depression and anxiety for a long time, and to a degree, I do. But I am more on the PTSD side. I am a trauma survivor. And, one of the things that's so wonderful about the community is the positivity and this network of people that just want to see you lift up and want to bring only good vibes to your network. It's been invaluable for my mental health, and especially at a point where, earlier this year where I decided to kind of step away from Wrestling Inc. And, I'd been in a management capacity for major websites for almost a decade at that point. It's very, very high stress, go kind of environment. It's been wonderful to take a step back, realize this network that I have built over the past 10 years and get to kind of engage it at my speed and bring people the kind of content that I'm proud of and that I think is fun. A lot of the times I just think it's fun content as well. So it's stuff I'm proud of and stuff I think is fun and funny, all that good stuff. It's been nice.
It's interesting you bring that up, the mental health stuff, because I'm deciding currently whether or not to talk about what happened recently with me, and I probably will on this episode. But as a also survivor of trauma, and for me, for childhood trauma, and very not dealing with it. Thought, like you said, thought I dealt with it a lot, but really didn't, my entire life. And now things are starting to bubble over. It's one good thing about getting older, starting to recognize these triggers and start to recognize putting yourself into a positive space. Is that one of the reasons why you're doing your own thing? Because it puts yourself into a positive space when you need a positive space?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, I've worked with so many wonderful people over the years, and I don't want to say that I was in like a bad mental health space or anything at Wrestling Inc. or WrestleZone, or really any of the people I've worked with. It's always a personal struggle, with kind of trying to find your limits and your boundaries and how to create that space. I will say that it has been better for me and my mental health to have the freedom if I need to take a day or an hour or a longer walk with my dog, or really just any of that stuff that comes along with just being somebody that can set your own pace a little bit more. That has been really helpful. So yeah, and back to the wrestling friends thing. I think, again, just getting to dive back into my network and find those people who support me and are really cool and fun to talk to and very smart have been good for me as well. It's been just wonderful all around.
When I'm dealing with my stuff, like I was today about stuff that happened earlier or last week, who am I talking to? I talked to my good friend, maybe my best friend, Conrad Thompson, who is someone I would not know except for wrestling, right? Conrad is someone who I would never have met if not for wrestling. Do you have a lot of your real life friends or people from the wrestling world?
I have several strong acquaintances from wrestling. I've made a couple friends over the years, but I'm still pretty much just like a guy in Chicago. I have a group of college friends that none of us have left the city. When I go out on the weekend, it's usually old comedians and college buddies. But I would be remiss if I say there haven't been a couple people over the year that I haven't picked up with wrestling. The problem is with wrestling is I was on the indies for so long and I saw the business side of it, and you meet friends in pro wrestling, but it's always kind of like you're there to do a job, and then like you leave, and so it's not always real formal. So yeah,
more so with wrestling than other things as far as people wanting to show you different sides of themselves, right? Like it's hard to know where the reality begins because of it being wrestling.
Yeah, it is. It's tough sometimes to know who's real and who's fake, and it's hard to find sometimes people that you get to spend any length of time with. You drive into town, you drive out to wherever you're going, you spend a couple hours together, and then maybe you don't see each other for a couple weeks, couple years, right? You try to stay in touch with texts. I don't know how all these people send out all these happy birthday messages. I don't know how they keep track of all this stuff all the time. Yeah. I do my best to try to send texts and messages when I can, but again, it's with the internet and social media, everybody's circles have grown so big. It's so hard to keep up with everybody now and really create those really strong, I feel like, lasting connections. So
when the DAX show stopped, I was presented a couple people maybe that to do podcasts with. I decided I didn't want to do that. And then someone pitched me this idea of maybe do some breaking news and having a guest once in a while and all this. And I literally said, that's what Nick Houseman's doing now. I don't, you have to find your own, talking to Conrad today, talking about what my future's in podcasting. And I said, the last thing I want to do is a Conrad Light podcast ever again. The reason it worked with Dax is because he is a current person. It has to be different. So for you, you're starting Haus of Wrestling. How do you find your space in this space to create something unique and compelling and hopefully revenue drawing when everybody else is trying to do this everybody else are trying to reach the same goals, maybe not about the same way?
It's a really, really good question. For me, as I've moved along, the one thing that I knew was my strength, but I didn't know it was really going to be my sword in this, was my ability to get firsthand contact from correspondence with people, doing interviews and things like that. I've been lucky to break a couple behind the scenes stories. I did the Ace Steel thing that was really big deal. But for me, what makes me different is I feel like just my voice and the questions I'm willing to ask and the places I'm willing to go and wanting to go. That's always been my marquee, or that's become my marquee the past couple of years is, wow, why do you ask those things? How did you know to ask those things? Why did you know? I think that my skill, what separates me is when you come over and you see my conversations, you're not going to hear people talk a lot about some of the stuff you may hear them on other podcasts or appearances talk about. And if it is that, I may push it in other directions. A good example was I had Medusa. This was actually for Inside the Ropes, for what it's worth. But I was talking to Medusa a couple weeks ago. Medusa I've talked to many times. Very interesting woman.
Same, we
get into the weeds about her time in the early 90s working for Vince, and I just decided to talk to her candidly about what it was like to be a woman in the early 90s working for Vince, who we know now was not necessarily a good actor in a lot of ways towards women. And to kind of get her to loosen up and open up and talk about how really horrifying it was to be a woman in that period. I mean, describing women waking up and finding women drugged with their head shaves and eyebrows shaved and all this kind of craziness. It's not uplifting, but those are the kinds of details that I think are important, the conversations I think that are important to have to remind people, what's going on in this business? What is the history of this business? What's the reality of these situations? What are you not being told? Those are a lot of the times the places I go, and I think that's why people gravitate towards my content, because I do try to get different things out of people that you don't normally hear.
Yeah, Medusa is someone that I was so close to at one point, and that when she saw Matthew the same day I saw you, she cried because of how big Matthew was. Like Medusa and I were pretty close, and I still think the world of her. But when I worked with her, she was very reluctant to talk about those kind of things because of where the relationships were and that kind of thing. Is that the challenge in pro wrestling, right? Because there's so much people won't talk about. There's a conversation that you and I will probably have off the air as soon as it's over of everything that everybody's talking about. And we can't talk about it because, first of all, you're a journalist, and with journalism, you have to follow certain rules. But other parts of it, you just don't want to be thought of in a certain way and completely blackballed and put out. Like, to me, that's a big part of the wrestling world. Is that incorrect?
I wish I could report more of the stuff that I hear about that other people don't want me to talk about. The problem with the worst kept secrets in pro wrestling is they're the worst kept secrets in pro wrestling for a reason, right? A lot of times it's the victims that don't want to talk, that don't want their stories out there, that don't want to go on the record. They don't even be off the record, right? You can know about things and talk to somebody that's been through something, and at the end of the day, if they say they don't want to be a part of it, they don't want it out there. You don't want to put that person through another traumatizing situation. Absolutely. And again, as somebody who's a trauma survivor, it's like, I know what it's like to, all of a sudden have something be brought up that you were not prepared for or get treated a certain way, and all of a sudden you're right back there. And it can be very, very bad for your mental health. So that is a really tough balancing act, finding out about those things and not being able to report about them. I wish I could report on more bad behavior or things in the industry that people don't want me reporting on. I don't think there's if you have there's a huge difference between reporting stories that are rooted in fact and writing things that you heard and think are true. Because if you're putting things out there that you're like, oh, I heard this from somebody and man, this sounds wild. Well, you don't really. It's very reckless for you to go out there and say something you don't know is true, and you have no idea if this reckless thing that you're saying is going to have wild ramifications beyond what you know. But if you're saying something that you know is true and you know is valuable for the community to hear and is maybe not something the community wants to hear, I think it is your obligation to report on that stuff, right? And I don't think there's any – I've never experienced any blowback on my end from reporting anything that people in the industry may not have wanted to hear. I'm going to go to Money in the Bank in London. I'll be at AEW Collision and Dynamite. No harm, no foul, right? Very few people have pushed back on my style, right? And I think that's the misconception is people say, I can't say or do this because I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get heat. I'm going to have somebody come at me. And I'm here to tell you that that's very, very, very rare. If you're right and you're doing something that you think is good and you're bringing something to the light that people should hear, more often than not, you're going to win some credit for that, and your voice is going to grow. And so I hope more people go with gusto towards those things that scare them.
Well, that's a great thing to hear, and it is a thing about, like I'm saying, oh, we could have a conversation off air, and it would just be gossip, right? And you can't report gossip because then you're lowering the bar to things that are almost definitely not true and
Right.
definitely will hurt people. And so, as a journalist, and I do consider you a journalist, explain to people maybe a little bit the kind of bar that has to be exceeded for you to actually report on something.
Oh, if I'm doing something that's behind the scenes, I have talked to multiple firsthand correspondents that are directly involved with the story, with probably some sourcing on top of that. Again, I don't do a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Some days I get lucky and stuff will come across my plate, and I'm like, I would be dumb not to run this. The example, the Ace Steel story is a great example. I went out looking for something completely different. I was interested in finding out about what was going on with Punk getting pulled from the Collision announcement, and Ace kept coming up, and I was like, that's really weird that Punk would be so upset about this. And after kind of asking around, I found out, well, Ace has already been back. And I'm like, what? Ace has already been back? And then I started asking people, I said, wait, what? Ace is already back? They go, oh yeah, well, nobody wanted to talk about it, but yeah, Ace is back. And then you start to kind of piece together little things here and there, and all of a sudden you've got this other story that is true and is going to disrupt the narrative, like you talk about not wanting to heat. I knew that this was going to disrupt the narrative that was going out for a lot of people at the time when it went out there, but
Sure.
I knew it was true, and I knew it was going to reset the table a little bit, so I ran it. So there you go.
When you talk about, and also with Ace Steel, he's someone, we follow each other on Twitter. So like, I've been tempted to just be like, hey dude, but I don't want to be that guy. Right. How do you go about making these certain contacts with people if you need to? Are you that kind of guy that if you see them on Twitter, you just DM somebody, not Ace Steel, but maybe somebody else, go, hey dude, I know we've never met, but here's a story I'm working on. What do you think? Blah, 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 blah. Or is it more than that?
It's different. It's different for everybody. Some people you just shoot a text. Some people want to DM. Some people like to do, encrypted apps like Signal and things like that. Some people only tell you in person. Some people you got to call on the phone if you want to talk to them.
Yeah, I know.
So, yeah, I mean, communication's weird. It's first contact is always very awkward. It's like inside sales. I used to be in inside sales. I used to sign up people for Grubhub. I used to sell walk-in bathtubs for what it's worth. And it's very much like you don't really know how your pitch is going to go. Some people might just hang the phone up on you. Some people might be like, it's incredible. My wife, she's paralyzed. She needs a walk-in bathtub. Sell me two, and whatever.
What is your goal now with this Haus of Wrestling? It seems like you're doing a lot of things. You're associated with Premier Streaming. Premier Streaming is the service that has a lot of exclusive content, including the video podcasts, I believe, of your podcasts and a lot of other things. What is it you want Haus of Wrestling to be when you look at your business plan, if you look at a strategic plan, and you say, this is where I would like it to be in 5 years, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. In 5 years, I really would love to have an office or a studio where we can create content that's not my office. That would be great. That's kind of the big dream. I obviously want to bring some people on. I'm building my war chest up right now. Again, I have great deals and partnerships with Premier Streaming Network and Inside the Ropes. So build up that war chest. I don't want to bring anybody on and then have to cut them in 6 months. So I'm hoping to bring some people on, increase the content, and again, get a space. There's a couple other things. I don't want to give away I got an announcement here coming up here pretty soon that I think will get people excited. There's some spaces I'd like to move into. I'll just put it that way.
I remember, I don't mean to keep bringing the jerk up, but I remember talking to Conrad a few years ago and him going, yeah, I know, right? And him going like, we don't even know if podcasting will be a thing in a few years, right?
Yeah.
We don't even know where anything's going or what we're doing. As far as content in the pro wrestling space, this show, Wrestling Friends, is focused a lot on content creators. Where do you think content is going? Like, what does that look like now? It seems less and less like the Bruce Pritchard type podcast. It seems more and more like news or critical stuff, like what Cornette does, although that's a totally different thing. But he's having success in that area. Where do you see content creation going, in particular, building your own brand with it?
Man, you're going to make me say things that I don't want to say because they're valuable things, Matt. But I think that the podcasting is, I think it's going to continue to expand like this. It's just getting easier and easier to podcast. I think shows like mine this, Jim Cornette's, these are called B-52s. These are talking head podcasts. There's really no difference between what we do here and other platforms. It's just shades of the same thing. Right. One long cut, people asking questions. My prediction in the next 5 years, without, again, giving away the spaces I'm looking to move in,
your
is
plan, right? You don't want you to do that. Yeah.
Serial podcasting, right? Nobody has really marketed that in the pro wrestling podcasting field, telling stories across 8 to 10 episodes that are well produced, that are not this style of podcast that has become so popularized in the pro wrestling space. I would not be surprised at all in the next couple of years to see podcasting content like that is more well produced, because again, if everybody can do what we're doing right now by hitting a button and getting some nice microphones, then it's going to become oversaturated. You're going to have to do something to show your difference in that space, and I expect more outside entities, especially more people with money, seeing the value that is coming from the pro wrestling space, to come in and do more content like that.
All right, well, before we get to the news of the day, because I definitely want to talk to you and hear your viewpoint on it. You know, it's funny you said that, you know, because for me, I'm discovering what I want to do in this space, and I'm still not sure. I know I'm better with somebody else. I know I'm not like Sam Roberts, who could just do stuff by himself, you know, but I think everybody needs to find their own space, and you found your space in the pro wrestling world, and you're obviously a fan. So what hooked you? What was the thing that, not just like, oh, I like wrestling, but I think I'll be watching this forever?
Well, I came along probably 95, right when Raw was getting off the ground, and pro wrestling exploded as I was becoming a human. You know, I was like 9-10 years old when I started watching wrestling, and a couple years later, you got Macho Man and Hulk Hogan showing up on WCW Saturday Night, which I remember vividly, and it was wild watching them jump over there. And you know, then I didn't know why, but Bret Hart all of a sudden became like the centerpiece over at WWE, and Shawn Michaels, and I loved that. And then once Monday Night Wars came along, I was skipping Boy Scout meetings on Monday nights to stay home, or begging my mom to. Sometimes I had to, and I kind of hated it. But I was, you know, I was dedicated. Monday Night Wars, I watched all 83 weeks or 82 weeks, or how many weeks, wherever Eric did.
83, yeah.
83 weeks.
Yeah.
About as long as our podcast. And then, you know, it was just it. You know, the whole thing, the whole vibe, the whole culture, the whole wave. You know, I was a big Mick Foley fan. I was a big Shawn Michaels fan. But I think it was just that energy of that time where it was just, you know, if you were a young kid, like this was what everybody was talking about. This is what everybody was into. So just like a lot of people, I just got swept up in it.
So as someone who grew up in that time, and someone who observes, watches, is a fan of wrestling now, when is pro wrestling at its absolute best for you? And I say that, prefacing it with, because I guess I like to ask long questions, is I find that when you ask people what the best music they've ever had listening to, or best music that ever lived, they usually say music that they grew up in their house listening to, right? So for you, what is it in wrestling that makes wrestling its best even now?
Storytelling, right? Good, nice, slow build storytelling. I think that I think Sami Zayn hit the nail on the head in an interview. It was like yesterday or late last week, where he just said, you know, the bloodline is the new modern template for good storytelling. You know, it's got a lot of waves. They're not rushing things week to week. They're saying, here's where we want to be in 4 weeks or 8 weeks. Let's kind of parse it out till we get there, and then when we get there, we're going to know where we want to be in another 4 to 8 weeks. And I think in-ring action is wonderful. I think there's a lot of great entertainers out there right now, but for me, the secret sauce is a good story, a good tale, something that's going to get me to sink my teeth in, and I think that the Bloodline is the great example of that. So
with and we'll jump around a little bit, with Danielson and Okada being named recently, right, as a match for Forbidden Door, huge deal, matchup, great thing, right? But as a rule, isn't it better to have a reason as opposed to a matchup? And Okada and Danielson are the prime example of why the exception makes the rule.
I think that there is a reason here, right? I think the story's great. The stories don't need to be super complicated all the time. These two guys want to show that they're the best in the world. That Danielson did this like Yoda-esque in the mountains promo, talking about how he's obsessed with this idea that he has to beat Okada or whatever. And Okada comes back and just kind of smugly is like, all right, You want to show you're the best in the world? Come my backyard. Let's do it at Forbidden Door. I think it's a very simple story. I loved it.
But in this particular case, it works because it's these two particular guys, right? Like, we have seen this a million times where this is the story is who's the best, right? And a lot of times it's not really a story because the example being that if Bryan Danielson and Okada really make it a story, it can't really be a story for everybody else. Do you think there needs to be more effort generally in creating reasons why people are in these matchups?
I mean, over in AEW world, for sure. I think that they're really kind of clipping along at maybe too fast of a pace. Like I say it over WWE, they're like, oh, here's where we're going to be in 4-8 weeks. Okay, we'll get there. We'll reset a couple weeks before, figure out where we want to go from there. It feels very fly by night a lot of the times over at AEW land right now. This particular match, I don't think needs the story like many others do, just because it's very much a Batman Superman type situation.
Right.
You just want to see these guys fight, and you want to see how they're going to try to beat each other. But not everybody's Batman and Superman, right? Some people are Sherlock Holmes and Annie Oakley, right? How do you make that story work, right? Two random ass characters.
Yeah, I was going to say Calamity Jane, right? But because a lot was made of Tony Khan calling Omega versus Vikingo a dream match, you know? And if you have all these dream matches, and Tony Khan definitely has the wherewithal and the ability and the will to create all these dream matches, it tends to lose its specialness. And it shows how very special it can be when you have Okada and Danielson. And maybe we should put more emphasis into a Vikingo versus Kenny Omega, not as a drawback on those two fellas, but just to show how special these kind of things can be.
Agreed. Yeah, there definitely seems to be a kind of cadence we're falling into here with AEW, right? It's a big dream match, doesn't have a lot of build, but then it delivers, and then Tony Khan says, well, you were all fools for thinking there wasn't much build here because you all loved the match. That's like his refrain every time now, I swear.
And those two Venn diagrams can touch, but it's not a full circle. It's not a full justification, right? Like AEW does justify a lot of, and by the way, I think people like the Cornette world or whatever, people that just hate AEW or whatever, I know you're not in that category. I know I'm not in that category. We really, really, really want to see it succeed. But the fact that a lot of times they kind of paint a lot of the same criticism with the same brush, or not understand or not choose to see some of the metrics that are truly there are kind of hurting them a little bit right now.
I think that they're very focused on the kind of tone that they've set. I think that they're, again, I don't want to make AEW sound too cool here, but they're like the punk rock, right? They're the anything can happen. You may not love the music, but you love the vibe. You love being in the club. You love the merchandise, that whole thing. WWE is more like, Coldplay, whatever,
Sure,
right?
Sure. But Green Day had to make American Idiot to evolve, right?
Agreed. Yeah, and that's the thing is they're only 3 years old, man. They're still growing at such a rapid click right now. We don't even know how big this thing's going to be content wise, how much space they're going to have for talent. I mean, they've been pushing this thing to the boundaries so quickly. I don't want to make excuses for them, but there's a lot of demands for the amount of money they're asking for right now, and they're having to kind of do some stuff hot shot week to week just to try to satiate, I think, a bunch of different masters at the moment.
And do you think maybe they'd be better served by not hot shotting? Because for me, they've got so much talent. They've got a million guys you could tell a story with, but you have to tell the story first, and to tell the story, you might have to not have a bunch of dream matches every week. Do you think that the level of patience that WWE has shown with the Bloodline could help, in a small measure, AEW?
Yeah, I think so. I'll use something as an example that everybody's talking about here at the moment. So Tony Khan has his 4th week of announcements set for Dynamite this week, where it's going to be 4 weeks.
I saw you making fun of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's got to be doing it to troll everybody, right? I mean, it's ridiculous at this point. And, the thing about it is, I get it. I look at the quarter-hour ratings every week. I've never seen a bump for Tony Khan announcement. Maybe I'm wrong. Call me up, Brandon Thurston. And maybe it is just something where he just enjoys watching the outrage over it. He thinks it's good for business. But, if you are going to go out there and you're going to do your main event for Collision, does it have to be Tony Khan rolling it out like this? Can it be somebody walking to the ring and announcing that a mystery AEW star is going to call out CM Punk for the first episode Collision tonight? Put the focus back on the talent, right? Put the focus back on the talent that are telling these stories to build those connections. Having Tony Khan announce a match gives it a little prestige, I guess, but it doesn't really give anything to the meat of the story you're trying to tell between these two guys. I'd rather hear somebody call Punk out, say why they want this match. Yeah, 1-2 weeks to build it up. You don't need to have Punk on TV, but use this as an opportunity to create something, right? That's the little nuance I feel like I'm missing sometimes over at AEW.
Right, because if you look at it from that perspective, right, if you said objectively, like what would be more effective? Tony Khan saying, I'm going to announce the two wrestlers that I'm going to put in the main event of this wrestling show I'm going to do.
Right.
Versus somebody came out in the ring on Dynamite and called out CM Punk. Oh my God. Like somebody just started talking crap on CM Punk. Like to me, there's really no objective way to say that the announcement is going to be more effective in drawing in fans than the angle.
No, 100%. And that's the thing is, again, it's like, we're getting kind of broad strokes where it's like we got to go from A to B, so we're just going to get there as quick as possible sometimes, and we're not going to really try to fill in too many blanks. We'll get to it later. Again, slow down, find those moments where you can create opportunities like we're just discussing.
And that's the thing with AEW, I find, is that the B is usually good, right? Like the idea of 4 pillars is a great idea for a pay-per-view 4 months from now, hypothetically, right? I'm talking if I had a time machine. So, but it's the steps to getting there. It's the strategic planning to go from one step to the next, to the next, to the next in a way that works, as opposed to filling in the details and maybe not giving as much thought to the steps as you do the end result.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not, and look, hey, I'm very interested to see what happens here when Collision launches, right? You're going to have people that haven't had a chance to shine on TV for a while in one locker room over at Collision. We're going to have some distance here between people who apparently don't like each other, as Punk is going to be there and the Elite are going to be away from it. This is a real recipe for great television for pro wrestling fans when you have creative minds, wrestlers that genuinely want to try to outdo each other. They want to show how much more creative they are, how much better they are in the ring. We could be seeing stuff on Saturday nights from the creative minds of Punk and Danielson that is so good that the people on Wednesday nights go, what the hell are we doing here? We got to up our game. We got to be telling better stories. And that is what I'm really hoping happens here between Dynamite and Collision. It's almost like a waiting game right now for that to happen. We're almost in this like limbo period until it really gets rolling.
How do you feel that's going to reconcile? Like, you have this idea that I'm in favor of fully, mostly because of what I feel is a roster full of very good wrestlers that could become stars. This idea of a brand split. But what about the logistical realities of a real company brand split where certain people can't be in the building at the same time? Like, is that a reality that you can actually run a company with? Like, is that something that is feasible long term?
Good question. I do think there's been some conversations about how they're going to deal with pay-per-views. I'm not going to say with certain people, with Punk and the Bucks and the Elite. I do think that when
are people going to have to leave the building when somebody else comes in to wrestle at a pay-per-view? Right?
Possibly.
Oh my God. Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm just being real. I've heard the idea that like Punk's going to be in his bus and going in and out. I would hope it doesn't go that far. I had heard that when Ace Steel was pulled from a backstage capacity, that the discussion of, oh, well, can I not be backstage with who X and X came up amongst people. And that's one of the reasons that Punk was pulled from Collision, was this exact issue here about how are we going to make pay-per-views work if the night before the big announcement I'm being told that Ace, can't be here alongside with me. What does that mean for me? And then everybody started calling their lawyers, and that's why this all fell apart. So I do think with how is this going to work? I think it's going to be a mess. I think we're going to hear a lot of I think we're going to hear a lot of stuff that's distracting from the product after literally every major event until December, when either everybody can get their act together and make a new deal and decide to stop acting like this, or some people are going to leave. So that's my prediction.
Because it doesn't seem really feasible. Like, it doesn't seem on a logistical level and we're talking not like if me and you had to work together, right? If me and you had to work together, we hated each other, and our boss said, y'all got to work together, that's one thing. But we're not like these superstars that millions of people adore, who have egos and have followings and have thousands of people around them saying, you're the best, you're the best. It seems like, I wish them luck, but I don't see a way it works.
I don't either. I'm at a point right now where I hear a lot of people say to me, man, I wish they could just figure it out. How can they not figure it out? Of course they're going to figure it out. And I'm here to tell you right now, they have not figured it out. I check in on this pretty regularly. I try to keep a pulse on the Bucks Punk odometer or whatever it is. And I don't think these two are anywhere close to being on the same page. If anything, I think that there may be people there still trying to find ways to soil the pond so that Punk doesn't stay and gets upset. Because, like, the thing about Punk in this situation is I think he's being pushed to try to freak out again. I think he got pushed to freak out the first time, and he freaked out, and he kind of gave them what they wanted, right? He kind of gave them the artillery they needed to be like, look, Punk's this psycho here. Of course, he's the problem, right? But what we didn't see behind the scenes for a couple months was what led to Punk feeling like he had it to lash out like that, right? Going back to like mental health struggles and things, loud, angry people that are, doing high school politics stuff backstage. If you're someone that's just trying to be cool and like spread good vibes, can get to you, right? So I don't know. I don't know where I went with that.
So it sounds like there's no solution.
No.
With Tony Khan, right? So much criticism on this guy, right? A lot of people who don't know criticize him for this, that, and the other. Do you kind of feel for this guy? Because this is a person who, by all accounts, is a decent human being. By all accounts, loves wrestling. Just wants to put cool wrestling up there. Like, he put Muta and Sting in a ring for no reason at all, other than to make himself happy and make the fans happy. Like, this is, do you feel bad for him in that maybe he got much more than he bargained for with people that he thought were going to be like-minded to his goals, but were more like-minded to their own?
I mean, it's hard to feel bad for Tony. I mean, Tony's got like $1 billion, something like that. It's an unenviable position. I do think that Tony gets a bad rap from people for certain things, like decisions he's made behind the scenes that a lot of people don't understand or question. You're not just dealing with big egos. That's one thing. You're dealing with these lawyers for these big egos. You're dealing with television networks that want certain things as well. And so you're making decisions, but you're making decisions kind of within parameters there. So I don't feel bad for Tony. I mean, he's got a job to do. He chose the job. He can do it the best he can.
So AEW this summer I tweeted it and I saw you tweet it. I think we're like-minded in a lot of things wrestling. I think there's a few of us who are measured in our prognostications. Raj, Geary, a lot of times, and I agree on stuff. You and I agree on stuff. And one thing we agree on is that this could be a make or break summer for All Elite Wrestling. This could be a summer where they show we're here and we belong and we're going to go to the next level, or it could be the summer where everything kind of falls apart. How do you feel it's going to look, say, October of 2023 after Forbidden Door, after All In, maybe All Out, the Collision debut, Punk coming back, and also a Ring of Honor pay-per-view?
I think it's gonna be. I wish I look. I'm born on Groundhog's Day. There's nobody that prognosticates better than me. But this one is murky at best. I think you made a very good point. It could go either way. If they pull it off, Punk comes back, everybody's getting along, things are clicking. Big, more than you expected viewership on Saturday nights for Collision. Dynamite becomes less stressful, less tension, less drama backstage. That starts to take off because their creative starts to get better. And all of a sudden you find yourself at the negotiating table with Warner Brothers Discovery, and they're saying, guys, things are working so well here. We got to get this locked down. What do we need to do to get you into another 5-year plan? Right. The other possible situation here is they get going. Somebody in the elite camp decides that CM Punk has to get changed in a porta potty. Punk freaks out. He starts, throwing bananas at everybody, and then nobody's talking about anything other than the banana fight in a porta potty. And then Warner Brothers Discovery goes, "You carnies with your bananas and your porta potties, please get off of our network," and it all goes to hell. So it's one of two ways. It's the first or the second. I guess there's a middle way where it kind of continues on as it is kind of now, which is where everybody's trying to enjoy the product while talking about stuff happening behind the scenes. We'll have to wait and see.
The critics of All Elite Wrestling were dealt a blow, when Wembley, the show in Wembley, sold so many tickets. And of course, the answer to that, a lot of people have, hey, it's a new market. And, it's not surprising that's successful. It's a little surprising in a good way. It also shows that All Elite Wrestling may have other avenues, other areas of exploitation of the market that we didn't even see. How big a bellwether is the Wembley thing to say, well, maybe there's a lot more out there for All Elite Wrestling than we anticipated?
I almost feel like the Wembley thing is an outlier in a way that has overshadowed their product almost to a detriment. Double or Nothing was so lost in the shuffle here with the build towards Wembley, and I think the creative probably had a hand in that as well. I think Forbidden Door is struggling a little bit as well in the shadow of Wembley. Obviously, they just put some big marquee matches up on the board. We'll see if that moves the tickets. But Wembley, the thing about Wembley is when you challenge AEW fans to do something, they really seem to love that. And when you say,
right.
And so when
we'll
you say,
show you,
there's
we'll
a real
fly to England,
right? Well, again, it's that punk rock mentality, right? They'll fill that place up beyond fire capacity because that's how you do it, right?
Right.
I think that it is one of those things that was just so big, so cool. Everybody was like, well, if this is the big cool thing we're doing, this is the big cool thing we're getting excited about, and all eyes went to there. I think it'll be great. I think it is certainly something to show the popularity of AEW and pro wrestling in general that they can do it, but it feels like an outlier to me. We're not seeing these kinds of ticket numbers move across the board for their content right now. So I don't think it is fair to assess the success of AEW right now based off of that Wembley show.
Right, because it's allowing people to kind of mask the issues going on by saying, see, look at Wembley.
Right.
Like, what could be wrong? A lot was made of the Double or Nothing pay-per-view about how maybe the pay-per-view sales were down year to year, and overall it being a disappointing show to some people, but other people very violently asserting it was a great show. What is your take on Double or Nothing? And also, the attendance that was there. These are real things. Like these are things that haters bring up, but these are real things that honest observers of the industry bring up as well. What is All Elite Wrestling doing not as well that they could have done to make Double or Nothing a bigger success?
AEW is defined. It is made or broken on its cool factor. And it doesn't help when you put out pictures where the picture I think Alvarez put out after Orange Cassidy's Battle Royale win, where there's literally nobody behind him. And I know everybody's going to say, oh, it's a hard cam area, but it's a very bad visual. It's very, That's also a slightly
disingenuous argument because when I get, on occasion, a free ticket, that's where I'll sit, right? Over there. And when the show is packed, that hard cam section is packed.
Correct. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And if it's not going to be packed, for the love of God, turn the lights off. Jesus Christ. At least hide it, right? So I thought little stuff. Look, that does not help your cool factor. It does not help your cool factor. I think when the product is not hot creatively, it does not help your cool factor. Max MJF is a very interesting world champion right now. I am probably in the minority when I say I think it is too early for Max to have been given the AEW World Championship. I would have probably continued to heat him up I think he was going to draw big ratings for you regardless of where he was on the card. But there are other people that are noticeably more tenured and more over and more responsible draws in your company that I think could be carrying that title. And if you are going to have Max carry that title, after what happened on that build to Double or Nothing, I would not let him book his programs in the top picture anymore. That is way too valuable real estate to have somebody 25 years old, as passionate and as smart and as whatever a savant as they are to the business, not responsible to have him having that much creative control over his top line program there.
Is that out there that he booked the four pillars?
Our good friend, not Connor Casey, Cassidy Haynes. Sorry, our good friend Cassidy Haynes over at Body Slam. He had reported that, and I like Cassidy, and I know everybody's kind of hit or miss with him sometimes. But the reason I pointed to that report is I had heard it before.
I heard the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I heard this is Max's program. He wrote it. He drew it up. It's his booking.
Yeah.
It's his baby. Like I heard that too. I didn't realize. And Cassidy is a friend for real, like a friend. Yeah. And so I'm sorry, Cassidy. I didn't know you did that. But yeah, like it being what it was. Maybe it's just a bad rule in general to let your top talent book stuff for themselves.
I mean, I thought that it was, look, if top talent can book something great for themselves, I would bet Punk was working with Max to put together a lot of their program, and both those guys working together with somebody as smart and creative as Max with a filter like somebody as tenured as Punk, that works out really, really well, right? The problem I had with Max's booking for this main event was it wasn't rooted in emotion. Never was. Nobody seemed invested in it. Right. It was like some kind of ABC type booking. One week you're going to do this match. The next match it's going to be a tag match. The next match is going to be a tournament match. Next match is going to be this kind of match. Felt very rudimentary, right? It wasn't ever rooted in emotion. And even when they tried to do promo segments that felt rooted in emotion, they came across really flat, And when you got Jack Perry saying, I don't want to cut promos, Darby Allin saying, I don't want the world championship, really takes the fucking piss out of this match. Sorry for my language, but it really deflates me thinking these guys really don't care if they win this match or not. That's how we felt about it going into it.
With Max, MJF, we both did the same things. Max, MJF. With MJF as champion, I'm with you in that I think it could be better, and that people fall in two camps, right? It was too soon for him, or he's the guy right now. Is there possibly a third and fourth and fifth and sixth option that maybe he is the guy right now, but maybe not the way he's been presented? Like, dude, the Max I saw at the Scrum, give me that world champion. That guy was way different to me than the one I see on TV. Just one example of it. Do you think there could be differences in his presentation to maximize, so to speak, his championship reign on AEW television?
Yeah, I think he needs to be a defined heel or babyface. I mean, I get heat every time I say this, but I don't think Max is a heel.
I said the same thing. I said that, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I wrote on Twitter recently, I said, he's very empathetic and compelling. Like, you feel for him and you want to root for him, and he's too cool for school, and he's all these things that people root for, what was it with the Regal thing? He came across as empathetic in that.
Yeah, he did. And all the stuff where he's talking about violence against Jewish people, Jewish Americans, all of that stuff. Like, he says things where you're like, man, that guy's a guy, he's kind of rough around the edges, but I really like that guy. He says some things I like from time to time.
He's a good guy down deep.
Right. The problem with that is when you put him next to a babyface and you are trying to make money on that babyface chasing Max, you cannot make that money, Matt. You can't make that money because nobody's cheering for that babyface against heel MJF. And it is almost impossible to pair Max with anybody and get a reaction for whoever he's up against. It's the MJF show. He is both heel and babyface, and you are just another person in the ring with him. And that is my big issue with Max as the top guy right now.
My suggestion for him as a character was, I think it would work better for him if his character truly felt people should cheer for him, and he was truly upset that they didn't. And I think whether or not it's that or not, just a little bit more depth into why he's such a piece of crap would do a lot. Look at Piper. Look at these people who drew a lot of money being truly hated. Max has that, but for some reason they think they're kind of we're post-ironic, but we're not really post-hate the bad guy, right?
Yeah, and I mean, every time you kind of start to get some heat with Max, he goes out and he does like a big band number or some random thing. I don't know. I think the guy will be better off with his second title run. I think right now, the way that Max is either heel or babyface just makes him very difficult to book in the main event picture, unless you're just super happy with the MJF show, which is really all it is right now for me.
Well, I love talking to you. This is our second long-form conversation we've had, and it's really enjoyable talking to you like this. We've hung out in all these cities and had a good time, but just sitting here talking wrestling is a blast with you, and I love what you're doing over there at Haus of Wrestling. And let people know everything they can know about Haus of Wrestling and how to get that sweet, sweet Nick Houseman content.
Well, first of all, Matt, it was great talking. This 50 whatever minutes we had here just flew absolutely right by.
Really did.
I didn't even realize we'd been talking this long. If you like me and you want to support me, go to Haus of Wrestling, HAUS of wrestling.com. I write about news nearly every day of the week, what's going on in pro wrestling. And then we have a podcast, Haus of Wrestling, on all podcast platforms. We do the live version of it Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon Eastern over on Premier Streaming Network. You got to sign up for Premier Plus to get that. But then we do the show, and everything we talk about on the show is stuff that I've written about on the site, bringing a lot of great co-hosts. Matt has been on the show, Dave Meltzer, Sean Ross Sapp, Wade Keller, yada, yada, yada. We just had Connor Casey. Seahawk will be on this week. It's all very good stuff.
You should promote it like a Who's Who of Wrestling and Matt Koon.
Who's Who of Wrestling and Matt Koon.
Right, exactly.
And I mentioned earlier, I work with Inside the Ropes. I do weekly interviews for them. We got one with Jimmy Corderas that's going out this week, one Blue Meanie last week. Always fun stuff there. Hoping to have a big announcement with Inside the Ropes here very shortly as well, so stay tuned for that. And if you want to buy a shirt, Haus of Wrestling, HAUS of Wrestling, Pro Wrestling Tees, go get your In Your House of Wrestling t-shirt. That's it. That's all I got.
Well, I definitely want to have you back because there's so many things I want to talk about we never even got to. But I just want to thank you so much for joining us here on Wrestling Friends, and I hope you had a good time, buddy.
Had a great time. Thanks so much for having me, Matt.
You got to admit, we're kind of rocking like batting average of 1,000 in our interviews, like from Corey Ryan Forrester to Colby Carino to Kate Elizabeth to Seahawk to Nick Houseman and to Raj Giri, man. We're killing it. Like, these are really interesting people, and these are the kind of friends I've made in the wrestling world, and I hope you made friends with them too, and you make friends with me. It was a great interview, man, and there was some kind of cool little nuggets dropped there if you paid attention. And we're going to talk a little bit about something I've gotten a lot of feedback for, which is anxiety and mental health issues, and kind of a message, and kind of, you know, if you stick around to the show, you get the good stuff, and that's kind of the good stuff maybe this week. But before we do, the good stuff can come to you every single month or whenever you want using the uniqueness of Butcher's Box. I say Butcher's Box, but that's not what it's called. It's called Butcher Box. Get incredible deals on premium cuts from Butcher Box. Deals as good are hard to come by at the grocery store, for sure. I've actually compared it. You know, when I wanted to use a service like this during the quarantine, I definitely priced it, and I said, this is a better deal. Plus, they bring it to your house, you know, which is important to me because I don't want to leave my house. So bring it on in, Butcher Box. You know, Butcher Box has all these deals. They make it very into options, right? They make it very easy. You get on their website and you can choose how often you get it, what you want in there, you know, how often you want to get it. I might have already said that, but it's really cool. And it's customizable anytime that you want it. And I don't like going to the grocery store. Also, the grocery store doesn't always have the meat I want. And they always have the meat I want delivered to my house, butcherbox.com. You know, I enjoy having, you know, some fillets in my freezer. I enjoy that. Looking for good deals on premium meat is hard to do. Butcher Box has it all. Like I said, I got fillets, I got strips right there in my freezer right now whenever I want one, and I have them often. I made a great meal with the ground beef they have. I made a chili with it, and my favorite cut from Butcher Box is the filet because they defrost easily and they always sound really good. And I enjoyed getting them during the quarantine because I didn't want to leave the house. And it comes in like a really cool, if you haven't gotten a package like this, really good packaging with dry ice, and everything is the way it should be. You're going to want to try ButcherBox and support the podcast in doing so. When you order from ButcherBox, it supports us and keeps this going. By us, by the way, I mean me. This is the most one-man operation in the history of podcasting right here. And because we want to like hook you up, right? We're giving you a special deal. Sign up today at butcherbox.com/Dax, D-A-X. That's right. That's right, Dax Harwood. I still use your promo codes, buddy. And use code DAX to get flank steak for free in every box for 3 months. That's free. That's free. Plus $20 off your first order. It's worth it just to try once, right? Try it once. Don't use it again if you don't like it, because you will like it and you will use it again. That's butcherbox.com/Dax and use code DAX to claim this deal, which is $20 off your first order plus free flank steak for free in every box for 3 months. Do it now. Fite Plus is the ultimate digital platform for live sports and entertainment, and they are now offering a free 7-day trial at tryfite.com. Fite Plus is packed with a premium live event schedule, over 1,000 hours of live action every year, a library of over 4,000 hours on demand, plus exclusive content. Fite is a great partner of ours. They support us, so let's support them. Give that free 7-day trial a try, and you'll be a member for life. Guys, I'm on Fite Plus. And anytime I want, especially over the weekend, I want to watch some GCW, want to watch some wrestling, you just put it on. It's on. Some BLP, all kinds of stuff. That's tryfite.com, TRYFITE.com.